Kristaps Porzingis is hurt. What does this mean for him? What does it mean for the team? What can the Celtics do to adjust who's in, who's out? We'll talk about it all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster brand, it's holiday season. Drop Drew in the mix, and 3 from KP. No, we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Deuce, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in locked on NASA. Karalis on the breakdown. Clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and Jace, how we started raising business. How we finish locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I got you covered every single day during the finals. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Watch the show on YouTube. Get into the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking about the team, about what I'm saying, about Kristaps Porzingis being hurt, a rare injury that will be the entirety of today's show. So let me just bring in Tom Westerholm. Whoop, there he is. Tom Westerholm. How you doing, Tom?
I'm good, man. I've got an injury that one of only 32 people of all time have ever had, but yeah, crazy, man.
Yeah, starting to learn a lot about torn medial retinaculum, which leads to the dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon.
Yeah.
That's not something that's going to roll right off the tongue. That's not going to be the title of any retrospectives.
Yeah, if you're Mike Breen, I hope you're practicing now. Because
medial retinaculum. Bang! Hurt my throat trying to do the.
He's a very talented man. Yeah, don't try.
That's hard to do. All right, so this alert came out like 20 past 2. We're sitting there. I'm at the American Airlines Center, walking around, briefly contemplating doing a video where I step on the logo's face, but then ultimately choosing not to do that because I'm not going to stoop to that level. But then all of a sudden, everybody's phones goes off, and I'm like, oh, okay. Everybody's like, oh, look at this injury update. You know it's bad when the team sends out the injury update via email. You know, like, oh, God, what is this? And then everybody read it, and then everybody's like, you can see the confused looks on people's faces. Are like, what? Do you know what this means? I have no idea what this means. People start Googling, Cleveland Clinic website traffic goes up 10,000%, all that stuff. So it's basically been described to me as a reverse Curt Schilling, a reverse bloody sock, that the same kind of thing where something got torn in the foot and the tendon for Curt Schilling rolled up over that little bump on the outside of his foot. So they stitched it to try to keep it from rolling up like that. That's happening on the inside of Porzingis's foot. You have a little bump on the inside of your ankle. There's a tendon, something tore, and it dislocates, which means it rolls up over that bone, which is very, very painful to just say out loud. So I can't imagine how painful that is for Kristaps Porzingis. But Tom, he's only listed as questionable for Game 3. There is the possibility that he can still play. So I don't know what. Let's just get big picture view. Like, when you first heard this, what was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think first reaction is like honestly, it's just, dude, I don't know, like this. And I mean, there's injuries. There's a few basketball injuries that you kind of can have an educated take about, when you're like not a doctor, very much not a doctor. Like, you can kind of have an opinion on the meniscus, right? Because the risks of trimming it versus repairing it, and everything that goes into that. Like, you can have opinions on that kind of stuff. This one, it's like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea, man. I think
the sound everybody made.
And I think, Dr. Jess Flynn on Twitter is usually, pretty good go-to.
Really good. Yeah.
She was talking about how the way she put it is that these are thoughtful discussions. And I was like, that's a really interesting way of of putting it. This isn't, this isn't like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, he can go. This isn't a no-brainer. Like, yeah, he can't go. And like, when you think about the discussion itself being thoughtful, you also have to take into account the fact that these are the NBA finals. And like, the fact that it's thoughtful means that if this was in March, very clearly Kristaps Porzingis would not be playing for a little bit, I think, right? Like, that's pretty abundantly clear here. The man is hurt. And
yes,
I think Joe Mazzulla described it as a serious injury. Like, I think we'd be talking about probably some time if this was the regular season. And when you go on PubMed or whatever, and you start a lot of surgical stuff, right? Like, there's plenty of people who have this injury get operations, and that's concerning, right. Obviously. I think beyond that, it's really going to come down to like, hey, do you trust the Celtics medical staff? Jess Flynn says they're great. I believe her much more than I know anything about the nitty gritties of what they do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. Sure seems I'm sure they're very talented, smart people, but realistically, I think you want him to be out there. His plus minus obviously makes a huge difference. Schematically, it's very clear what a big difference he makes. I know we'll probably get to this a little later. I also don't think that the Celtics are done for if he doesn't play. I think like they can certainly still win the series even if he's not in. But yeah, I mean it's a big deal. Like this, I guess that's my first reaction, right? Is like, this is a big deal. I don't totally know what to expect of it. And
yeah. So I actually had a conversation with Dr. Flynn there before she put that out, and it's kind of like informing me of like a lot of the like, okay, this is a lot of my information is coming directly from her, as well as some of the other stuff that I've read and try to do some quick research on. And there's a real probability that whenever this season does end, that we're going to get the next medical update about Kristaps Porzingis will be successful surgery to repair, blah, blah, blah. And he'll be fine. He'll be fine to start next season. That's the expectation. So this isn't like you hear tear and dislocation and all that stuff.
There are a lot of scary words in that.
There's a lot of scary stuff. And, when you read the entire thing, torn medial retinaculum allowing dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon. You're like, what the hell? But also do you realize that it happened in the third quarter, where I didn't realize that it even happened. You saw him kind of like play, and he stayed in the game. He went out and challenged a Kyrie Irving shot, and then he just came up kind of like lame and was like, you could see him sort of limping around out there. And so you knew something happened, but you weren't sure what. But then he came back in the fourth quarter. So step one is he suffered the injury. It happened, and he continued to play. And even though at the end it was clear he was starting to get, it was starting to kind of hurt, and his mobility was impacted. It's not like a torn ACL or something like that. Or one of those things where the injury happens and the guy goes down. And so that is the encouraging part. And the rest is just so kind of up in the air, right? So the one thing that was expressed, and Dr. Flynn expressed it on Twitter as well, everybody's kind of getting together and being like, okay, this is a new one. Like, it's like all of the team doctors are kind of like getting together to say, oh, okay, we've never, like, I don't even know. I'm sure somebody in the NBA has suffered this injury before, but maybe I'm not 100% sure that this might be the first time this has ever happened to an NBA player. So there's not a lot. It's a very rare injury.
Well, I mean, honestly, pretty good chance they haven't. Like, one of the studies that I was looking at was saying like, it's unclear how much this has happened. Like they hadn't done like a full overview, but it's like, so the first study I saw was the one that was like 2006, and there were 32 documented incidences total. And then the second one I said was like, second one I was looking at was like, it's probably more in the dozens than the hundreds. So like, they're not joking around. This is a rare injury at very least, it's a rare injury to have diagnosed, right? Like,
Yes.
there's
yes.
a chance that people have like suffered the injury and then just kind of gone about their day, and like, wow, I'm really sore. I don't think I can play pickup ball this week. But like,
Yeah.
No,
No. That's so. This is like the Tobias Funke. There are dozens of us. Dozens. That's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate.
It's so wild, dude.
I mean, what bad luck. But also, like, it's not connected to the calf injury, but it also sort of kind of has something to do with the calf injury, because if you're kind of putting a lot of extra pressure on the left leg to
Sure seems like a
deal with the right leg,
thing. Yeah.
the compensation, it could be like, this actually might have played a role, but also it just seemed like really just bad luck. Or Kristaps Porzingis is just kind of like injury prone, and that kind of stuff happens when you're 7'3" and putting all this stress on your joints. We'll talk about Joe Mazzulla's reaction, because he said it's a serious injury, and I don't know. I had a kind of a question about that, and let's see where they go from here. We'll talk about all that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. I've talked about therapy a lot on this show. I've talked about it on Twitter. I've gone through it. I continue to seek it out from time to time, because I think it is very helpful in getting you through just daily life. Sometimes the stresses of the day can pile on, and sometimes some stuff that's been lingering can kind of pile up and be a problem. That's why BetterHelp is a real kind of game changer when it comes to therapy, because you don't have to go searching for somebody in your area or somebody near work. And if you don't click with that person, now you got to do this whole search over again. And who knows where you're going to find somebody that might click with you. This is all done online. So it's convenient, it's flexible, it's suited to your schedule. And look, there's a lot of guys here who listen to the show, who watch the show. And look, I understand, guys. Therapy, you might be like, ugh, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Look, you could do this in the privacy of your own home, all done online. So if you fill out a brief questionnaire, you go to betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA, BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Not only do you get 10% off your first month, you get matched with this licensed therapist. You can switch at any time. You can just do it on your own, and you don't even have to tell anybody if you don't want to. So go check it out. It's very convenient, and it could help you out. So betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA. I'm talking about this Kristaps Porzingis injury and more, including Jayson Tatum. Is he playing well or not? I think if you listen to yesterday's podcast, you know what my thoughts are there. And things from a Dallas Mavericks perspective. It's all in Locked On NBA with me and Jake Madison. Go check it out after you're done with this show. All right, let's get back to this. Tom, we were talking about this, a few of us at the arena, when Joe Mazzulla said, this is a serious injury and we're taking it out of his hands. And we weren't sure if like it was a rare moment of honesty for him, or is this Joe kind of being like, he never lets on to the severity of an injury. He never lets on to anything. Is there a little gamesmanship here with how serious this injury could be? Because I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of people be like, it's possible he could play. And we'll get into that in a few minutes, but just your reaction to hearing Joe say this is a serious injury.
Well, I mean, it would be the first time that a coach has started doing gamesmanship in these finals. So that's it's a big moment here. I think I think it's possible. I mean, I think the truth is, right, that it is a serious injury. Like when you start seeing like that, there's like a lot of people end up having to, do a surgery, have to go like a surgical route. Yeah. That's serious. When, torn and dislocation. It's like, I understand that
That's
he's day to day.
serious.
But that's serious, So I think it's possible that this can be a little bit of both, right? It's possible that it's like, yeah, don't tip your hand. Don't give Jayson Kidd anything. I mean, one way or the other, it doesn't benefit Joe Mazzulla at all to tell members of the media like, yeah, he's definitely going to play, or yeah, he's not going to play. Like, it doesn't offer him any benefit to tip his hand in that way. So why bother? But I think, like going just kind of by the letter of the law, by precisely what he said verbatim, it is a serious injury. So, I mean, certainly well within his rights to say it either way. But I think that whether Porzingis plays or not, I don't think either way that will change the truth of what Mazzulla said.
So let's go with him not playing. Let's just see. There are two options. One is, well, Al Horford's been starting anyway. Mm-hmm. One is Luke Kornet coming in, and I guess three options. One is Luke Kornet. One is Tillman or Brissett or something like that. Go small. Another is you shift Tatum to center, and when you sub Al Horford out, you bring in Sam Hauser, and Tatum shifts to the center, and then Horford, when he checks back in, can check in for Tatum, and that's just your option. Let's start exploring the Kornet thing, because I think it's the least favorable option, and I kind of want to get it out of the way, but I also think that they might try it. Mm-hmm. Kornet is a non-shooter, which means he ends up in the dunker spot, which takes like Holiday and White and those guys out, which brings Gafford or Lively down to the rim.
Yeah.
So number one, spacing is completely changed. If Lively or Gafford, if a big is there at the rim with Kornet, you can drive and try to draw him up and try to throw the lob. You can try to do what Dallas loves to do. Kornet can catch a lob. That's certainly fine. But also, if you drive and the big is there, it allows Dallas to play the corner shooter passing lanes.
Right.
And so playing Kornet, to me, materially changes what the Celtics do on offense, which they can do because they're versatile. But it's going to be less driving kick. To me, I think it's going to be more mid-range. They're going to drop. They're going to say, okay, it's 2-point time, and it's going to be Tatum and Brown in the middle at the elbow, just shooting those jumpers and have to make those jumpers for however long Kornet is in the game. I think that's how a Kornet plan would work, because it basically allows the Mavs, for however long he's out there, to briefly snap back into the type of defense they want to play. And I kind of don't like that option.
A couple things about I agree. I do think that snapping back in to that is still harder against the Celtics than it was against the Timberwolves, right? Like, there's still more shooters. Even if you have Kornet in there, like, you still have the spacing. Like, that's still there. So that's good. I think it allows you to do kind of a poor man's version of what they were trying to do defensively with Porzingis in the game, right? Like, and importantly,
which would be
on the defensive end. I think that matters. I think that's I think that's the number one case for going the Kornet route, is like, it kind of allows you to still clog up the paint in that way. He's good at that. And then I think the other thing about it that it matters when you're looking at that versus, say, Tatum, and honestly, kind of Tillman too, is that the rebounding, you don't want to just start getting smashed on the offensive boards. It'd be nice. And like, Tatum is a really good rebounder, but that gets a lot harder when he's playing the 5. He's a really good rebounder for a 3-4 tweener. He's not, it's just, that's a tall order to be like, hey man, okay, you're going to be guarding the center, and you gotta put an end to all these possessions. So I don't think that you're certainly right about those passing lanes being not quite as open, and I mean, that throws a big wrench into what the Celtics have been doing so successfully. I think the good news, if you're the Celtics, is you're still going to get that drive, right? Unless Luka digs deep into something that we don't think he has, whether that's Derek White, Drew Holiday, whatever it is. Those guys can throw lobs to Kornet, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're still getting that. You're still getting that penetration. You're still getting into the paint, and the guy's either going to let you have to take that open mid-range jumper, that open floater, whatever it is, or he's going to have to come up and then the lob's there. So like, I don't think Kornet being in is like apocalyptic. Like I've seen quite a few Celtics people, Celtics fans, whatever, on Twitter, who are really just like, Luke Kornet is the end of the Celtics world. I don't think that's quite the case, but it does complicate the best version of the Celtics that has been so good against the Mavericks so far.
Yeah, it is. Let me think about that for a second here, because we'll come back with more on the Luke stuff, and I think I'm still settling on Tatum at the 5. I think, but let's talk it through. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book because they give you $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. The Celtics have now moved to 2.5-point underdogs in this game. So if you're feeling it, if you're feeling like, hey, wait a second, I don't think they're going to lose. So you take your $5 bet, you put it on the Celtics there. And if you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. You can also bet on baseball. You can do whatever you want. But go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. If you're a new customer and you sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon, you place that $5 winning bet. That's how you get your $200. So add a big win to your summer bucket list, and make sure you're using those tools to set your budget, to set your limits, so you're having fun at FanDuel and gambling responsibly at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On Sports today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. This show is heavily featured nowadays because Celtics are big news. So runs heavy there. It's good stuff there on the Locked On Sports Today feed. Not that fake crap, not that fake discussion, blah, 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 the fake arguing and all that stuff. And by the way, thanks to everybody, all the new listeners, all the new people hopping on board. I've been checking the Apple podcast rankings today. We're up to 8th, the number 8 basketball podcast in the world, according to Apple, passing Gilbert Arenas, passing Draymond Green's show, number 8 amongst all basketball podcasts. So I just got to say thank you to everyone for hopping on board and making that the case. So very thrilled. Okay, let's get back to talking basketball. You're correct that Luke Kornet defensively, like that's the reason why you do it. Because this is the thing. You're picking one, right? You're kind of picking one thing. If you're picking Kornet, it's because you want that defense. And it might be a time and score situation. Maybe you go with Tatum early because you want that spacing and you want the offensive firepower, and you're like, we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it on the other end. And he's already been guarding bigs anyway in these first couple of games. So you do it a little bit more often. A tough ask, no doubt. But if you say, okay, early on we might go with Tatum, and then if the Celtics are nursing a lead, if it's a 12-point lead, maybe that's where you go with Kornet, because now you want to make sure that okay. And look, it's connected. It's connected. You still want to have good spacing because you need to make the shots and you need to score so you can go back and set your defense. But Luke Kornet has done well over the course of the season. He has not forgotten how to play basketball. Right. And the fact that he hasn't played, it's not like it's, like you said, it's like some death knell. He's aware of how to play, and he does a few things well. And it's not like he's playing against Joel Embiid out there, right?
Right.
It's you know, he can match up against these guys well enough. But you are still going to get the dribble penetration. You are still going to get past Luka. You are still going to get past Kyrie. The question is, where do you go from there offensively? And if Dallas can play those passing lanes, I guess you just got to make the read. If you drive and what that guy on that side does will determine, do you pass it out there? Do you keep going at Lively? Do you or Gafford or do you pull up from mid-range, take a little fadeaway or something? That'll determine that stuff. You're going to be taking tougher shots. If you can get an overly excited big to step up, you can kind of like get the lob off maybe. But I definitely don't feel like the Oshae Brissett, Xavier Tillman option is going to work, because now you've got guys who are non-shooters who won't be in the dunker spot, and that now you're helping off of those guys in the perimeter, which means you can help on the drives. And if you can load up on the drives, then you're preventing the one thing that Boston is getting consistently, which is getting into the paint. And
which the one thing they've been getting consistently, because it's the only thing they've needed to do, to be clear.
That's right. That's right. That is true. But so I'm gonna shift it and say that my least favorite option is Tillman Brissett, because they're just non-shooters. They will clog. Dallas will clog the paint, cut off the driving lanes.
Yeah.
And that to me is too much. So I still want the driving lanes. I still want the spacing out there. I'm going to go with Tatum at the 5. I still think Tatum, like, you've got 2 days off. You're a big dude.
Yeah.
You can hang. You know what I mean? Like you can hang, and it might change who's doing the driving. Yeah. But maybe. I still feel like that's the best option, because you can look. I said it before. Whenever it's time to take Horford out, you bring in Sam Hauser, who's done fine defensively in this series.
Yeah.
You bring in Hauser. You have now you're still playing 5 out, and Tatum is guarding the big. There's going to be an emphasis on him to rebound, of course, but it still gives you that space where the Mavs are still going to be scrambling. Like, that defense is still going to be a mess with Tatum at the 5 when Porzingis is out, if Porzingis is out. And that's just, to me, that's the best option, because that's going to give you the best chance to score, and it's going to give you the best chance to come back and set your D. And maybe you don't get the same level of blocked shots at the rim, but the Celtics have also done a pretty good job defending the rim without Porzingis on the floor. So to me, that's the best option.
Yeah, I think you definitely missed the rim protection. One thing I will say I like about that option is that you still are cutting. You still are very able. In fact, you're probably even more able to shut off the water around the 3-point line for the Mavericks, right? Like, you Tatum in the game, you can still completely lock up the 3-point line. And I think that matters a lot. I think that one of the reasons that the Celtics are up 2-0 is because they've been able to, make those looks harder, make the passes harder to make. And like, Tatum does allow you to still do that. I think that the emphasis, like you said, it comes down to, can you rebound well? Tatum's a great rebounder. It's going to come down to, can you do that? Can you protect the rim? But, realistically, like, how much of the Mavericks got into the rim anyway? Like, you've just got to, I don't know. I think either way, I think you're in a decent position there. And again, I still like most of the game for the Celtics, right? Like, you can buy a few minutes. I really like the idea of doing whatever the situation calls for, right? If you need some offense, make Tatum the 5. If you need some defense, make Kornet the 5. I think that makes the most sense by far. Yeah. Just kind of take it situationally, try to buy the, couple minutes every quarter that you need, or whatever it is, and go from there. But I think mixing it up is probably the way to go.
make use of the timeouts.
Yeah.
Try to, get creative. Sometimes maybe the timeout strategy for Joe has been very simple. But I think the desire to hold 2 for the last 2 minutes, just in case, it's there, and you don't want to sacrifice that if you don't have to. But if the Celtics do have like a 12-point lead, Tatum has played a long stretch, and it might be a time where he's come out, you have the opportunity. Let's call a timeout here.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a mandatory coming up, like somewhere, or you just when you have that opportunity to, we're going to call a timeout here. There's going to be another one down here. Just use it to get 3 minutes of rest. The timeouts are longer in the finals, and that matters.
Yep.
So take advantage of those opportunities, and maybe sacrifice something that has been a principle of the past, and say, we're going to have to give up something, right? And all the players have had to sacrifice. So Joe Mazzulla is going to have to sacrifice a little too. That precious 2 timeouts, maybe there's one that you call a little bit earlier to say, I need the rest, because the rest is going to prevent us from being in a position to need that timeout later anyway. So that's going to be, I think, the coaching element to this, in addition to finding the right kind of personnel and all that stuff. But I want to preserve as much of what the Celtics have been getting without Porzingis. And to me, that's Tatum at the 5 for as long as you can legitimately do it. It just, offensively, the spacing is there. And because everything is connected, that's my choice, at least early on.
And I think the long and the short of it, right, is that like the Celtics, Porzingis, no Porzingis, Tatum at the 5, Kornet at the 5 in those minutes. If the Celtics shoot better from 3, if they have like a big, like a decent shooting night, it's not going to materially matter that much. Like,
that's true.
If the numbers kind of resolve a little bit here, they start making some threes, if Tatum starts to cook a little bit, like, again, I said on yesterday's podcast, I think the Mavericks will probably play better at home. I think Kyrie will probably play better. I think there's a chance that role players start to make some threes, but like, realistically, if the Celtics normalize a little bit from behind the arc, and if Tatum heats up at all, like, they're going to be in pretty good shape, kind of either way, I think.
So I don't think and we haven't even talked about if Porzingis plays, but I think the very simple thing is, if Porzingis plays, then he plays. And if he's too limited, if he's out there and he looks bad, then you got to pull him. So I don't think there's really a level of discussion there. If he plays, then great. All perfect. Then all of this was just practice. We just talked practice hypotheticals. But if he plays and you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting out of him, then you sit him and you say, okay, we're just going to go without it. I don't know which way to go. I did read, like, Gary Washburn tweeted out, one orthopedic guy was like, you can tape this up. You can tape this up and keep the tendon in place. And that's one way to go. And who knows, maybe with this kinesio tape technology that they've got now, that is a way to keep it from rolling over and doing the painful thing.
Right.
And if they can just do that, and maybe he's not as explosive, the good thing is he's 7'3". Like,
I was going to say, his explosiveness is not really the main selling point.
Right.
It's the 30-point 3-pointers and the being 7'3", standing right in front of the rim. That's the main selling point here.
That's right. So if he can play, then great. I hope he can play, not just because it helps the Celtics, but I hope this guy gets a chance to play in Dallas, go back to Dallas and actually play, and to be a part of a championship team, like, and feel like he's part of the championship team. I hope he can have that opportunity to get out there and be like on the floor, get that roar of being like subbed out to applause for, when the Celtics are up 20 in the fourth quarter, like that moment. Like, I hope he gets that stuff. It's,
well, he won't get that tomorrow if the Celtics are up by 20.
Yeah, he won't get that. All right. So we'll see what happens. As always, we'll be here with plenty of podcasts, maybe a bonus podcast here or two. We'll see. We'll see. I got plenty of content here in the Locked On Celtics podcast. So Tom, always appreciate you being part of it.
Appreciate you, man.
And I appreciate you, the listener, the watcher, who's here with me every single day. We're doing it every day through the finals. So make sure you're subscribed. Thank you again so much for propelling this podcast to such great heights. I really do appreciate it. All the people that have come by to say hi to me at the arena. That's so cool to meet everybody. I met a guy, Kim from Denmark. This dude flew in from Denmark for like 2 days, went from Denmark to Boston just to catch game 2, and then he left. So that's insane dedication. But shout out to everybody that's come by and said hi. And I would love it if you helped me out just a little bit more and shared the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.